Hi, I'm Caden here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our pre-Super Bowl mishmash episode. Just throwing a couple of things together right here, which includes some reactions from the prior NFC and AFC championship game, as well as a little bit of a look ahead to the Pro Bowl, because though it is certainly by no means this glamorous affair, the Pro Bowl is a thing and it is pretty cool. I think people hate on it a little more than it deserves. I'm by no means excited for it, but I think a lot of people are anti-Pro Bowl. And I don't think anyone needs to be pro-Pro Bowl. But the Pro Bowl's fun. You know, it gives some
Definitely
reason.
a nice honor to have, throw it on your name or your player's name. But as far as playing the game, I always thought it was dangerous because you could blow out a knee and miss all of next season.
Which even in the flag is ironically still a possibility, much less, but a possibility. But I think they've done very well at making it fun here in the last few years with the skills competitions and turning into flag. Is it dumb? A little. But is it fun? Yeah, it's fun. So before we jump into our Pro Bowl section of it, just a quick little reaction to the two championship games, starting with the AFC championship game, where the 3-seed Kansas City Chiefs went to Baltimore to take on the 1-seed Ravens and picked up a win on the road by a score of 17-10. Now, the Chiefs in this one, I don't think played electric by any means. I think that just like they've been doing all year, they played good, not great, and were able to sneak out a win, whether through luck, the other team playing worse, a little bit of refereeing per usual that's sprinkled in there. Not terrible by any means, but slightly noticeable in some places. And in this one, it was really all three of those combined. They got a couple of big plays that the Ravens were just kind of caught lacking on. Lamar quite literally did his best to throw that game away. I think Lamar played very poorly overall. Almost 300 yards and a touchdown, but also a absolutely back-breaking pick late in the game, which was just a silly pick to say the least into triple coverage. 2 red zone turnovers, including that aforementioned one by Lamar, which he threw into triple coverage to Isaiah Likely, and one that was fumbled into the end zone and recovered by the Chiefs by Zay Flowers, the rookie receiver. So just bad mistakes. And when you have a one possession game and you had 2 red zone turnovers, you've got to imagine that's at least 6 points there, if not up to 14-point swing with those 2 turnovers. So really bummed to see it for the Ravens because they were on a hot streak. I think this is the best the Ravens have looked in a while. But nonetheless, the Chiefs are just undeniable.
They certainly are. And you know who's undeniable is Patrick Mahomes. He continues to prove that he is one of the, if not the top quarterback in the NFL this year, the upcoming year, last year. Right now, he's proven to be the best. This will be his, his 4th Super Bowl?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 4th Super Bowl in the 6 years that he's been starting as starting quarterback. You can't even believe it when you say it. Those are Tom Brady numbers.
Literally.
And one big shout out here that I want to give is the Chiefs defense that was able to keep the Ravens at bay with those 2 big turnovers. But not only that, but shutting down the running game and forcing them to pass with only 3 carries each going to Justice Hill and Gus Edwards, which is just bizarre because the Ravens were the top rushing unit in the NFL this year. So for them to completely get away from the running game is just bizarre, and that's the big reason why they lost, I feel like.
Definitely, I completely agree. But yeah, I don't hate to admit it per se, but you have to admit that what Patrick Mahomes is doing is really just unheard of, really impressive stuff. So good for him.
And a breakout game for Travis Kelce, who totally proved me wrong after last week saying I thought he'd get shut down. He went 11 for 11 with 116 yards and a touchdown.
I love describing it as a breakout game. Like, yeah, this guy's really on the up and coming.
Yeah.
You might not have heard of this Travis Kelce guy.
He had some stinkers going into these playoffs.
He did have a couple tough ones in a row, that's for sure. And then joining the Chiefs in a totally original, totally unpredictable Super Bowl matchup here, we had the Detroit Lions as the 3 seed heading to San Francisco to take on the 49ers as the 1 seed. And though it looked bad for them at first, the 49ers are able to pull off a comeback victory and get a win at home to send them to the Super Bowl. Overall, this was really the Lions' game to lose. And guess what? In classic Detroit fashion, they lost it. They absolutely stormed out to a dominant start. And really, especially at halftime, it looked like there was a point where there was zero chance for the Niners, and more than anything, zero life in the Niners, because even more than the Lions beat them, because the Lions played well. The Lions definitely beat them in the first half. The Niners just let the Lions beat them in the first half. They kind of laid down, but it was a tale of two teams because they looked completely different in the second half. I don't know what Shanahan said in the locker room during halftime. I don't know what confidence the Lions built up in the locker room at the halftime, because it was very unlike them to quit. They really haven't given up like that, it almost seems, the whole season to this point. So crazier things have happened, but this one's a pretty insane one. I mean, good stuff by the Niners overall, but I think more than the Niners had a comeback win, the Lions let it slip through their fingers.
This is definitely one where the Lions lost it, because they had a 24-7 lead going into halftime and allowed the 49ers to score 27 unanswered points before finally getting a touchdown and stopping the bleeding. But it just wasn't enough. By that point, it was too late, and a big key decision by Dan Campbell to go for it on 4th and 3 when down by a field goal. He went for it on 4th down and missed when he could have kicked I think it was only a 48-yard field goal.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy
for the Money Badger. They even got a good kicker, so Michael Badgley, who has proven that he could make those kicks, and he would have made it and made it a tie game, and it might have been a different story for the Lions if they had made that field goal. But instead, they went for it and they lost. They went for it 3 times on 4th down, and they lost all 4 of those 4th down conversions, which, I mean, I guess that's what the Lions, that's how they got there, I guess, is their aggressiveness to go for it. So die on the hill you're standing on, I guess. But it certainly, was their turn to get bitten by that, and it just wasn't enough for them to overcome it once the San Francisco 49ers completed their comeback.
Did they have 3 or 4 missed 4th downs? You said both of them.
Oh,
I'm actually not sure.
I think it was 3.
I think it was 3 as well, but still, going 0 for 3 on 4th down in a 3-point game, it's pretty damn big. That's a big swing.
That's the difference maker right there.
But that's, like you already touched on, that's exactly what I was going to say. You live by the gamble and you die by the gamble. And they've been living on that gamble all year long. They got where they are right now by being risky, taking those fake punts, going for it on 4th down no matter where they are on the field. And it's worked almost all year to really good consistency. And, sometimes you just aren't hitting. And tonight, or that night at least, they weren't hitting, to say the least. So
and it really changed I just saw the video of the Brandon Ayuk catch off of Kendall Villor's face mask. And that just completely changed the whole momentum of the game and what sparked the beginning of the 49ers comeback.
Yeah, it was that, and then the next play was a McCaffrey touchdown run, and then only like 2 or 3 plays later was a fumble that the Niners got in Detroit territory. And you could just feel the momentum shift. It was absolutely crazy to witness it like that. But those are our reactions to the championship games for the NFC and AFC divisions. So now, moving on to the Pro Bowl, not quite to the Super Bowl yet. Cal and I were talking today, and he said that he's just barely minimally looked through the Pro Bowl roster, and I, other than hearing some news sources here and there, have seen pretty much nothing on what's on the Pro Bowl roster. So I thought a kind of fun episode would just be for us to kind of scroll through and look at the Pro Bowl roster for each team and just kind of give our live reactions. Who are we surprised is there? Who are we surprised isn't there? Things like that. So we will just go sliding right into that, starting with of course, the position of quarterback. For your Pro Bowl rosters for the quarterbacks in the AFC, you have Tua Tagovailoa, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes, who will not be there, of course, since he will be going to the Super Bowl. So I'm not sure who the backup will end
Yeah,
up
I
being
don't
there.
know who the reserves are. But
And then as for the NFC side of the quarterback, you have Brock Purdy, who again will not be there. But then their other two quarterbacks are Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford. So to be honest, that actually all kind of adds up to me. There isn't anything too surprising there. I don't know if there's any quarterbacks that definitely should have made it. I mean, he's going to say Jordan Love. To be honest, if Cousins kept on the pace he would have been, if he could have stayed
That is
healthy,
true.
I think Cousins definitely would have been a Pro Bowl, Super Bowl, hopefully, wish a Super Bowl, definitely would have been a Pro Bowl quarterback. But since he got injured, since Jordan Love is in his first year, calm down, he's not elite yet, I think this kind of makes sense. This is probably personal preference, but I don't think Tua should have been there. Yell at me if you want. A lot of people probably would. I don't think Tua himself is a good quarterback. I think he's surrounded by good players more than anything. But he did have a hell of a season stat-wise, and that's what the Pro Bowl is all about.
Yeah, I mean, he did have quite the season stat-wise. So, I mean, when you look at the numbers, it looks like he should belong there, but I get what you're saying because he definitely benefited from Tyreek Hill being an MVP candidate. But I do think that Jordan Love was snubbed, at least a reserve spot for Jordan Love, but not even a reserve spot for him. You're talking about the quarterback with the second most touchdown passes in the NFL this year with 32, in front of guys like Purdy and Stafford. Now, obviously Dak had more this year, so I see why he's there, but I do feel like Jordan Love should have at least earned a reserve for the Pro Bowl and maybe, could have got in with some guys sitting out or some Super Bowl replacements. But as far as I know, he's not a reserve. And other than that, I have no real problem with that. If he had to replace somebody, I think he should replace Matthew Stafford, who did have an okay year and a comeback year and didn't get affected by injury this year. So he did fight through that, and he did miss a couple games, I guess. And I remember he did lose or miss the Packers game now that I think about it. That was when we faced Brett Rippon. Yeah,
exactly.
So, but nonetheless, I think that most of the quarterbacks belong there when you look at the numbers, and I think that that's just how it is. That they looked at the numbers and the stats say that they belong there.
Yeah, you actually make a pretty good point. Just like I brought up with the reason that Tua's there is because he had the stats. Jordan Love did have the stats to back it up at the end of the day. He really did. So if you're going just based off of stats, we'll have to look it up after this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was a reserve or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, and we don't have the reserves here.
Yeah, we'll find it. I'll find
that list just goes so long because you got so many guys that sit out the game or choose not to go, and then you got the Super Bowl replacements.
Yeah. You're like a top 15 quarterback and you're somewhere on the reserve list. So now moving on to the running backs in the AFC portion, we have James Cook, Raheem Mostert, and Derrick Henry. And Raheem Mostert is really the surprise there. I was about to say, I don't know why I thought he was on the Niners going back a couple of years.
No, not anymore.
I was about to say he wasn't playing, but he of course is playing, being on the Dolphins now. And then on the NFC side of things, we have someone who actually isn't playing in Christian McCaffrey. And we have DeAndre Swift and Kyren Williams. I love that Kyren Williams is there. I think that he was, you want to talk about a breakout guy, a do-it-all guy, he really was. You needed a 1-yard touchdown, he was going to get it for you. You needed a guy who was going to come out of the backfield and catch a pass for a first. He was going to get that for you. You needed a guy to get you ahead of the sticks on first down with an outside run. He's going to get that for you. He was just one of those guys, one of those running backs who really could do it all. Really impressed by what he was able to do in his young career and as his first year as a starter because is he a rookie? I can't remember.
He is a rookie. He was one of their rookie 5th rounders to go along with Puka Nacua.
I couldn't remember if he was a first or second year guy, but nonetheless, really impressive start. And I was more than anything throw off with Raheem Mostert because I'm kind of surprised he made it. I think this loops back to the stat padding section of it because I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least, he might have led the NFL in touchdowns.
I believe
not
he
just
did.
for running backs, for everybody. So
I believe he did. He had at least 20 or 21 total touchdowns.
So him being a starter there as the running back, I guess, makes complete sense. But again, I think he was getting a lot of other benefits by especially that play calling with Mike McDaniels there as their play caller, and just that offense in general kind of being as explosive as it was. But again, probably just some bias peeking through right there.
Yeah, I like mostly the running backs. The one I really question is Kyren Williams because he's a rookie and he did have a good year, but I just felt like other guys probably had better years. I thought, I was trying to think. Aaron Jones would have made it had he stayed healthy all year because look at how he finished the year with 4 straight 100-yard games. So he's another one that kind of I feel like got snubbed, but he didn't play the whole year. So when you look at his numbers, they're not very good. When you look at the whole season, they're very low for an Aaron Jones running back year. But other than that, I feel like the AFC running backs, they're spot on. I can't think of anyone else that should be in there for the AFC running backs. And then also for the NFC running backs, obviously Christian McCaffrey earns the top spot, and that I agree with unanimously. And DeAndre Swift kind of surprises me, but he had another breakout year, in Philly, and he was another one with a breakout year in Philly. And once he got the juice to play again, playing for his hometown. So it was nice to see him earn that honor because he, kind of got left off the Detroit train.
Yeah, I don't think DeAndre Swift is quite as good as people give him credit for, but he played a lot of solid years of running back in Detroit and never got much notification for it. So I'm happy to see him get a little more of spotlight shined on him going to Philly and doing as well as he did. So now moving on to the receivers, we have Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, and Jamar Chase making up the AFC side of things. And then jumping to the NFC side, we have CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Mike Evans, and Puka Nacua. Of course, Puka Nacua, how could you not have him on there? That makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
The absolute breakout season he had. It's really cool to see 2 rookies from the same team on the Pro Bowl roster. I gotta imagine that hasn't happened in a while, maybe since Dak and Zeke were both in the Pro Bowl for the NFC back in 2016 in their rookie year as a dynamic duo. So that's really cool to see. I like that. And then speaking of the Cowboys, I think CeeDee Lamb is a guy who's very deserving as well. Really, truly solidified himself as a number 1 wide receiver in the absence of Amari Cooper and other receivers this year. And then as for the wide receiver side, you have aforementioned Amari Cooper, who had a hell of a season in Cleveland and just really proved himself to be the guy there. And Tyreek Hill, who out of all the Dolphins is probably the most deserving in my eyes. I think he is truly the most game-changing guy on that Miami Dolphins offense. But everybody on the list for receivers, I agree with overall.
Yeah, I think they hit the receivers spot on. Like you said, Tyreek Hill led the league in receiving yards, so he definitely deserved to be there. I'm surprised Justin Jefferson didn't make it because he still surpassed 1,000 yards even with missing 7 games. So that goes back to what I was kind of talking about with Aaron Jones missing so many games, but he was still able to surpass 1,000 yards.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I could easily see him getting on there or maybe being a reserve or however it works exactly, but it's hard to warrant a guy who misses almost half the season getting on there, even though he did play so crazy out of his mind on the games that he did. But I do, of course, as a Vikings fan, I think it's stupid he's not on there, but I do understand. Oh, did you have anything else?
Nope. Like I said, they were pretty spot on with the receivers. The only one I really questioned was why Jefferson wasn't there.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Like I said, with the missing half the season.
It's a tough one. It's tough. Injuries suck. So now moving on to tight end, we have the AFC with pretty obvious ones in Travis Kelce and breakout year for David Njoku. Awesome to see him get that. And then moving on to the NFC side of things, we have another breakout in Sam Laporta as well as George Kittle, who of course will not be playing, just as Travis Kelce won't in the NFC. So that's kind of cool to see that the starting 2 tight ends for both teams are 2 Super Bowl tight ends. Kind of shows that the position has really evolved into a true part of an offense because for a while there, they were nothing but a glorified right or left tackle wherever you wanted to throw them in. So it's cool to see these guys actually getting into the receiving game. And to pile on to that receiving game aspect of it, it's pretty cool that the next two fill-ins for them are both great receiving tight ends. And rookie Sam Laporta, who came from Iowa, tight end U, can't say anything against it. Unarguable at this point that Iowa is tight end U, really coming in and showing off his hands, as well as a good ability to block, which you'll always get as an Iowa Hawkeye. But then none other than David Njoku as well, who really finally proved himself. He's been kind of that more athletic tight end, bigger body, but still has the speed in the hands. And I don't know if it was him not stepping up to the occasion or offenses not really using him well. They went through a lot of bad coaching there in Cleveland while he was there until they got Stefanski. So I'm really happy to see him finally figure out that niche, finally figure out what works for him, and have a very well-deserved Pro Bowl season.
I like that Njoku made it. I agree with that one very much because all he needed was Joe Flacco. Who would have thought? All he needed was Joe Flacco, and just look at that chemistry like that between Njoku and Flacco. Who would have thought? But another thing I like is that both of the NFC tight ends are Iowa tight ends, and George Kittle and Sam Laporta. So that's just another big shout out to the Iowa Hawkeyes for not only getting one but two Pro Bowl tight ends, including I'm trying to think of the other one.
Noah Fant.
TJ Hawkinson. And Hawkinson, who probably would have been in had he not gotten injured also.
Agreed.
And Noah Fant and Hawkinson came out of the same draft class, so that really is nice for them. But they weren't able to make it, but I believe that they are reserves. I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't, or I would be surprised if they were not reserves. So we'll have to see if that is, and see if all four Iowa tight ends can make it to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. I would guarantee that Hawkinson is a reserve and just kind of bombarded by injury a little bit. And I'd actually be interested to see if Fant was, because Fant didn't do too bad this season.
No.
I mean, he was playing in an offense that used three tight ends consistently, and he still showed himself up pretty well. So I think he might be in the reserves somewhere. So now we're going to kind of lump together all of these big, mean blockers, including the fullback as well. Starting in the NFC, we have Alec Ingold of the Miami Dolphins, just another person on that Dolphins offense to make it to the Pro Bowl, even as a fullback. And then as for tackles, you have Laramie Tunzel, Deion Dawkins, Teron Armstead. Moving on to guards, you have Quentin Nelson, Joel Antonio, and Joe Thuney. And with centers, you have Creed Humphreys and Tyler Lindenbaum. Now jumping to those big means over on the NFC side of things, you have with the fullback, none other than Kyle Juszczyk, but who of course will be going to the Super Bowl, so we'll have to check the reserves, but possibly a CJ Ham fill in there.
Ooh.
I would love to see it. And then moving on to the tackles, we have Trent Williams, Lane Johnson, and Penei Sewell. With guards, Zach Martin, Chris Lindstrom, and Landon Dickerson. And with centers, Jason Kelsey and Frank Ragnow. I don't have a ton to say about blockers. I ironically played offensive line my whole life, but I'm terrible at scouting them or deciding who does better than others. I know the basics, but once you get to the NFL, it's just so intricate and you have to be so athletic while still having that size and strength that it's pretty easy for some of these guys who are really better than others to differentiate themselves. I usually say, can't believe I don't see Brian O'Neill on here, but I must even admit, as a Vikings fan, he kind of took a step back this year just with some injuries nagging him and other things like that. But flipping it to the other side of the Vikings offensive line, I would have liked to see Christian Darrisaw because I think he continues to get better each and every year. But guys like Trent Williams and Lane Johnson have just been doing it for so long, so well, that it makes sense why they're there.
Yeah, and Penei Sewell has really shown that he's going to be the next big star to be the left tackle there in Detroit. He's made a huge impact on that team, and that run blocking, and not only his run blocking, but his pass blocking as well has been dynamic. I agree with pretty much all of the offensive line for the AFC and NFC, and the fullback. The fullback isn't used very much anymore, so it's probably slim pickings on
Yeah.
who's really going in that fullback spot. That's why we could see CJ Ham as a fullback replacement. And I like that Tyler Linderbaum, another Hawkeye, shout out to another Hawkeye that made the Pro Bowl as a center.
Yeah, definitely. It is Hawkeye filled, and I haven't seen him yet, but something tells me we'll probably see at least one Hawkeye on the defense somewhere, but we'll see. So we'll loop together the the defensive line here now, starting in the AFC with defensive end Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson, and inside defensive tackles Chris Jones, Quentin Williams, and Justin Matabuke. Always struggle with his name. I can never say his name to save my life. And moving to the blue NFC side, we have defensive ends Nick Bosa, Montez Sweat, and Aiden Hutchinson, with defensive tackles Aaron Donald, Dexter Lawrence, and Javon Hargrave. All pretty obvious ones there. Javon Hargrave, of course, won't be playing as he is a 49er, so we'll see who fills in on the inside for him there. I think there's a lot of good options, including a Lee McNeil from the Detroit Lions. He has really shown up as a huge run stuffer in the league, so I wouldn't be surprised if we've seen him kind of sneak in there as a surprise entry. And my kind of surprise or shocker entry is Justin Mabaduke more than anything. It's just, he definitely was good. I don't argue that at all, but he's just one of those names where the Pro Bowl is usually all names that are top of mind names, like guys you automatically think of when you think of the best of the best.
It's a lot of fan voting.
Exactly. Much fan voting. So it is cool to see him in there, even though he's not really that marquee name. So good for him to get an entry there.
Yeah, and I like that Montez Sweat was able to make it on the NFC side, and he made it for both the Bears and the Commanders. So one of the only players to ever get a Pro Bowl recognition of both teams. No, I don't know if he made it for both teams. I wouldn't be surprised because he did end up leading both the Bears and the Commanders in sacks. I don't know if we ended up covering it at the end of the season, but he did end up leading them both in sacks, which is the first player to ever do that in NFL history. So I think that he should make it as both a Commander and a Chicago Bear.
As I say, they have the teams. They should just put a little backslash right there, / Washington Commanders. It would actually be quite funny. Now moving on to the linebacker level, starting with the AFC. We have TJ Watt, Khalil Mack, and Josh Allen, with Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen as your two inside linebackers. Of course, those first three guys are practically glorified defensive ends, just stand-up edge rushers, but that's how the NFL works nowadays. And then going to the NFC, with your three edge rushing linebackers, you have Micah Parsons, Danielle Hunter, and Hassan Reddick, with Fred Warner and Bobby Wagner taking those inside spots. Of course, the big one I love to see there is Danielle Hunter. A lot of people after the neck injury said, can he still do it? Even the Vikings kind of gave him a can you still do it contract. And he went out there and absolutely balled out. He almost led the league in sacks. I know he was for a while, and then he slowed down a little bit because the whole Vikings defense kind of slowed down a little bit. But nonetheless, I don't think he ended up leading, but I got to imagine he was at least second or third. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was top three. And then guys like Micah Parsons, of course, you have to have him in there as well, no doubt about it. Then on the NFC side, or AFC side of things rather, love to see Josh Allen, love to see Khalil Mack still doing it, and cool to see that both the Ravens inside linebackers made it, with Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith both deservingly being there.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why I'm surprised they didn't make a bigger impact in last Sunday's game, because these are two perennial Pro Bowlers at your inside linebacker spots. And as far as the edge rushers go, obviously TJ Watt is the star here, who I believe he was the league leader in sacks with 19 or 19 and a half.
I believe so as well.
So he obviously deserved to be there, and I am very surprised that surprised that Danielle Hunter made it because of the season that he had. And surprised by the season that he had, because he did almost lead the league in sacks, and he made a huge impact and showed that he can still make a huge impact in that Vikings defense.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what we end up doing with him this offseason, because now that we gave him that show me contract and he showed us, It'll be interesting to see if we
He's
pay him like we should.
Gonna make some money somewhere.
Something tells me someone's gonna pay him.
Exactly. And Micah Parsons too, who I've been on that train since he was drafted. He said he was gonna be a star, and he truly is.
I was nervous about him with the off-field stuff, but he's been able to completely wipe that away and just done nothing but be an elite edge rusher. So happy to see him there. So now moving on to the secondary, we have all the corners and safeties together, starting with the AFC having Pat Surtain, Sauce Gardner, Jalen Ramsey, and Denzel Ward as their corners, with Justin Simmons and Micah Fitzpatrick making up the free safeties, and Kyle Hamilton and... they just have three safeties. Safeties. So Justin Simmons and Micah Fitzpatrick being the two free safeties there, and Kyle Hamilton taking that strong safety spot. And then moving on to the NFC side of things, your four corners there are going to be Deron Bland, who of course just broke the record for pick six in a single season, so no wonder he is there looking at it stat-wise. And then Charvarius Ward, who will not be playing, Jalen Johnson from the Bears, and rookie Devin Witherspoon from the Seahawks, so that's pretty cool. And then they have the inverse of the AFC with one free safety being Jesse Bates, and two strong safeties being Budda Baker and Julian Love. Now, when I see this, my big thing right here, lots of bias coming in here, but how do no Viking safeties make it? We have three safeties who I think really did play at a Pro Bowl level this year. Harrison Smith might not have had quite the stats he's always had, but the fact that he still is the game changer that he is at his age is so impressive. Cam Bynum had one of the biggest glow-up seasons I've ever seen. He was everywhere on the field. He could cover. He was great in run support. And Josh Metellus really kind of reinvented and re-shown how effective that linebacker safety hybrid role can be. So the fact that none of those three guys got one of the top three positions at safety, and a guy like Julian Love did, is crazy to me. I'm not saying Julian Love had a bad season by any means, but saying that Julian Love deserved that spot more than either of the three Viking safeties, or any of the three Viking safeties, I should say, is kind of crazy to me. But like I said, a lot of bias poking through there. And what I like to see is rookie Devon Witherspoon as a corner there. That was cool to see.
Yeah, it is nice to see him make it, because he was kind of a reach at the number 5 overall spot last year to be picked, but he proved to be definitely worth that spot. But I think I see what happened here is that there was some sort of error, and people were voting for Julian Love and not Jordan Love. So that's how Julian Love made it, because he got all the quarterback votes.
They got the wrong J Love.
They got the wrong J Love. I see it. That's the only thing that makes sense. That's just got to be what happened.
The NFC is really just screwing up. They don't even know what they're doing, man. No, but actually, you touched on the fan voting earlier. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Cam Bynum led safeties in fan voting, and he wasn't even a top 3. You'll have to check that, because I'm not positive on that. But I'm pretty sure I saw it on Vikings Twitter that he was the number 1 voted safety, and he wasn't even top 3.
Huh.
Which is, if that's true, is absolutely crazy to me that he didn't and Julian Love did, but the wrong J Love. I think you're spot on right there. I think you got it.
I think you got it figured out. There's an error in the voting. Who would have thought? An error in voting.
So now moving on to the special teams portion, the most important part of every Pro Bowl, the special teamers. The punter for the AFC is AJ Cole from the Raiders. The kicker for the AFC is, no one other will ever be while he is playing other than Justin Tucker. The return specialist is rookie Marvin Mims Jr. for the Broncos, and then the special teams ace is going to be Miles Kilbrew, with the long snapper being Ross Maslick from the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, God, I love the special teamers. It cracks me up to read the special teams Pro Bowl roster every time. And then going on to the NFC side of things, we have punter Brian Anger from the Dallas Cowboys, who is old but still doing it, and the other Cowboys kicker, with Brandon Aubrey being their place kicker. Raheed Shaheed, the rookie for the New Orleans Saints, is a return specialist, with Jalen Maven being their special teams ace from the Lions. and none other than the Minnesota Vikings, Andrew DePaula, taking it as the long snapper. Pretty obvious what my favorite one is there. Been a long snapper my whole life, so I love that the Vikings, my favorite team, have one of the best long snappers in the league in Andrew DePaula. He had a shaky first year, and we stuck with him, and he has just paid nothing but dividends since that. I want to say I know it's his second, and I want to say it's his third Pro Bowl in a row, which I know for a long snapper isn't like crazy cool or crazy impressive. But, well, it actually is crazy impressive because this is really the only, like, award long snappers get is being voted the best in their conference. And he's done it 2 to 3 years in a row. Love to see it.
Yeah, and those long snappers, they play long careers. And you see some of them go 15, 17 years.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yeah, so he could be there for a long time. He could be a stalwart there. And I agree with most of the return specialists for both sides, except I feel like Keyshawn Nixon should have been the kick returner at least. I know they don't really have a kick returner spot. They just have a return specialist. But Rashid Shaheed at least did do both kicks and punt returns. So I understand why he's there. But as far as Keyshawn Nixon goes, he led the league in kickoff return average. So I feel like he definitely should have earned a spot on this Pro Bowl roster. And other than that, I agree with, especially the kickers, with Justin Tucker obviously always being automatic and being a record holder, and Brandon Aubrey, who was perfect through the year, except for I believe he had one blocked kick.
Yep, so he didn't even technically miss one. He just had it blocked. So good stuff by him. But, I will give you, that is a valid argument with Nixon. I think that he is a very dangerous returner. So that was our reaction, a little bit of a live reaction to the Pro Bowl roster and a little bit of an announcement if you haven't got to hear them, because if you don't really go seeking it out, you don't really hear much about it. So it's nice to kind of have everything laid out for you. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, I am going to see if I can find an articles with the reserve just to see if Jordan Love is there. The only one I'm looking for is Jordan Love, because I'd be curious to see if he made his way on there, because
he could end up being a first-time Pro Bowl quarterback.
That'd be pretty cool for him, because I was very against it. I knew Callan was going to say it, and I didn't agree at all. But I must say, he made a valid argument, because if a guy like Tua is going to be on there just because of those stats, it would make sense if they gave it to Jordan Love just because of those stats. This article
like
just has the 3 as well. Does it give them towards the bottom? No, apparently they don't actually announce the reserves. If you don't,
because the list is so long.
Yeah, if you don't make the starting roster, you don't even get your name said. But we'll know once the Pro Bowl comes around. They'll have to bring someone else in.
They'll have to throw out the depth chart. So
exactly. They'll have to bring someone down there for the skills competition starting here soon. Got to be sometime this week. So that was our kind of reaction overall to both the Pro Bowl rosters as well as the championship games from last week. Stay tuned until next week when we give our final predictions for the Super Bowl, which will wrap up our not only the NFL season, but our head-to-head pick'em game as well. So make sure to stay tuned in until then. But until next time, don't forget
to eat the W.